Right, so the beverage section of the grocery store is a pretty confusing section because it's in the middle aisles and there are endless sea of juices and sodas and bottled waters that are there. And so I try to bring a little bit of clarity to, what are the three beverages that are questionably healthy for you? There's no real controversy of them, all right? Because other drinks like juices and sodas, lots of controversy, lots of data. But the three things I call the holy trinity of beverages are water. Okay, water actually is critical for hydration, critical to maintain our health defenses, critical for our metabolism. You need water in the system, okay? And drinking water is something that is very natural and important to us. And when you drink cool water, you activate these temperature gauges in our stomach that are triggering our metabolism to kind of warm up the water in our stomach so we don't cool our core body temperature. So there's even metabolic benefits to drinking water. Water is also bisatiating. So when you actually drink water with a meal, you're naturally stretching out your stomach a little bit, and rather than actually having food in there, that water stretch actually basically slows down your appetite, slows down your hunger as well, which also helps to contribute to preventing you from overeating as well. So water is really good for you. There's no, it's a human right to drink water. We have to drink water. It's really great. Footnote to that, and this is actually something that I think really deserves careful research. More careful research is, bottled water, which is so commonly consumed, probably will have microplastics in it. Almost certainly does. And, even though the research hasn't clearly nailed what the harm of microplastics are, I would say it's probably not so good for you. We can find it like attached to a red blood cell circulating our blood. That freaks me out actually to think about that. So if you can drink water, if you can drink water from a source other than bottled water, it's probably preferable. Yeah, get a filter at home. Get a filter at home. There's a great quote that a friend said years ago. An acquaintance said years ago. He said, either you get a filter or you become the filter. That's actually really true. And our kidney is going to be the filter and our bloodstream is going to become the filter. Yeah, you don't want to be accumulating these microplastics. But water is really, really a good beverage. Second is tea. We talked a little bit about green tea as being beneficial to you. And tea is the second most popular beverage in the world after drinking water. So we're talking about something that a lot of people have a lot of experience with. But what I point out in my book is not just green tea. It's different kinds of green tea. Matcha tea is actually good for you. Oolong tea, which is slightly fermented green tea, also has metabolic benefits, also has polyphenols. And then for green tea, if you have matcha, which you find in a ceremonial tea, you find in a Japanese restaurant, it's a bright green tea. It's kind of opaque because it's actually made with powder, and it's the entire tea leaf that's powdered. A lot of people don't realize this, but matcha is super packed with polyphenols. You know why? Matcha is grown in a very particular way. 28 days before they pick the tea leaf to make matcha, they put it under shade. They basically cover it with a canopy, and the shade is there. So the tea, in response to the tea leaf tea plant, in response to shade, actually wants to make more polyphenols. So they make anywhere from 30 to 300 times more polyphenols under the shade, all right? And then what happens when you pick the leaf? Cut off the stem, and then they powder dry and powder the entire leaf. And so that's why you have so much more polyphenol. It's like a stress response to not having, first is a stress response in a plant, but then you get more rather than having in a tea bag or loose tea leaves. You actually powder the entire leaf. So you're getting the entire leaf, including all the polyphenols. So you drink all the polyphenols, which is why you get 30 to 300 times more than just dunking a tea bag. You also get the dietary fiber, good for your gut microbiome. So matcha tea actually is quite amazing. I've actually done a study to show that matcha tea extracts can kill breast cancer stem cells. Wow, I'm always amazed by that because, look, as somebody who's been involved with biotech development and cancer treatment development, finding something that could kill stem cells, cancer stem cells, breast cancer stem cells, which is what makes cancers come back, is a holy grail. We don't have a drug for it, but here, matcha tea actually been shown in the lab to actually be able to do that. To me, is actually really jaw-dropping. Then going down into even more fermented tea, because traditionally, again, this idea that in our wellness community, we wind up having all these mantras, must drink green tea, and oxidized fermented tea is no good. Turns out that's not true. The science is showing that oolong tea, which is slightly fermented, also good for your metabolism. You can lose your waist, you can shrink your waist size, your waist circumference, lose body fat. And then even perhaps more surprising, if you take the extreme of fermented smoky dark teas, there's a tea that I write about called pure tea, P-U-E-R-H. One of your favorites, right? One of mine as well. This comes from a village of Pu'er that back thousands of years actually traded tea on the Silk Road. So they smoked the tea, they fermented it, So it actually survived the tea journey. And it turns out research had been done to show that pure tea lights up your brown fat, burns up, triggers your fat, excess fat burning by burning the cells, decreases your stem cells from making more fat, and whites, fats, visceral fat as well. Quite remarkable that this fermented tea that's supposedly, fermented, can't be good, doesn't have any of the polyphenols left. Wrong. And on top of that, they've actually discovered just a few years ago that there is this tradition, 1,000-year-old tradition of making pure tea. There's even a bacteria, a probiotic, that actually is that the bacteria is grown in the way that's fermented. In fact, they call it puerillis, a bacillus that actually grows in pure tea. So this is actually a probiotic tea, which to me is remarkable. And not only does it improve gut health, it's good for your metabolism as well. So it fires up your brown fat. So again, tea is the second part of the Holy Trinity. The third, which I always drink, and you asked me what did I want if I was coming in to do this podcast with you, and I requested a cup of coffee. Coffee has chlorogenic acid and many other polyphenols. But the chlorogenic acid not only boosts your health defenses, but it also triggers your metabolism, and it stimulates your metabolism from going as well. A little bit of the caffeine, which I'm able to tolerate. Not everybody can tolerate caffeine, but I'm able to tolerate the caffeine. Caffeine also stimulates not only your your brain, but also stimulates your metabolism as well. And I'm not encouraging people to go after caffeine. I'm just saying that coffee is one of the third of the Holy Trinity. Coffee, tea, and water that actually is really, really healthy. The beautiful thing about the way you present it is pu'er, one of my favorite teas. I drank it so much during college. Yeah, I would drink it all the time, and then I had a little bit of a gap. And then I'm thinking recently, I'm you know what? It's probably been a year or two since I've had it. When you know the information, it's another reminder of this thing that I used to enjoy, or that I've heard of, or that I heard somebody else having, wow, that's exciting for me. And you include it back into your routine, and all this culminates together. And it really goes into this last principle that you talk about in the 10 principles, which is live to eat, right? The joy of searching out, being a food hunter-forager in our modern world, and really leaning into the idea of not being fear-based around food. But actually, I'll let you set it up. Sometimes we hear this phrase, people say, oh, do you eat to live or do you live to eat? And almost live to eat has a demeaning tone that people give it in that capacity. Talk about how you're representing it to the audience. Yeah, well, in my book, one of the things that I really try to, and I hope the readers get this, convey is that we don't need to fear our food. The very foods that taste great can be actually good for us if we're mindful about how we eat it and when we eat it and all that kind of other stuff. And to find good combinations of it, and that these are connected to our old traditions. And that's really how I really became very mindful of this whole idea of living to eat. So I did a gap year before I went to medical school to become a doctor. I was a biochemist in college. And I was very enamored by history. And I was always interested in the Mediterranean because when I studied, I took a very influential course called the Renaissance History of Man. And that course fascinated me because it was really talking about that inflection point between the Dark Ages, the Middle Ages, and the Renaissance, sort of the Enlightenment, and all the incredible arts and sciences and literature explosion of culture that occurred during the Renaissance, right? And I realized something that was really amazing, which is that at any point, it didn't happen overnight. It wasn't one day was in a dark room, it's called the Middle Ages. And then one day somebody clicked on the light switch and, oh, it's a Renaissance. No, this actually took place over hundreds of years, that this evolution actually occurred. And I realized that there was something really valuable about this idea of growing to higher light, a stage of enlightenment that occurs over time. I really wanted to see where this occurred, which happened to be in the Mediterranean that we were studying in Italy and Greece. So I really wanted to get over there, study it. And then I also realized that the food traditions also, as part of my study, changed dramatically between the Middle Ages, where people were just cooking, those gigantic, Bronto burgers over a fire, to really beginning to understand how ingredients melded together, the simmering and the cooking and the stewing. These were not medieval age. You did have cavemen who weren't doing that, but really sort of during the Middle Age, that's when the modern Asian and Mediterranean actually cooking techniques came into being. So I wanted to see this